You could do a whole Arlington Road cinematic universe where you tell all these stories of like these fucking people and how far back they
every
go
single person
because they're mad about Tim Robbins' dad's farm or whatever.
Get over it. We all have childhood trauma. But come on. If I blew up a building every time I was sad about my childhood, there'd be no buildings left.
Welcome to 1999, the podcast. I'm John Brooks.
I'm Jen Tisdale. We're alive.
We are alive. We took a little summer breaky break.
Yep.
It's been nice.
Yep.
Jen, what have you been up to for summer vacation?
Oh, I went back to the nudie camp.
Oh, yeah.
And while there, we caught a man who snuck into the nudie camp. And I spotted him first. And it was because he was rubbing his genitalia, which is not nudie camp behavior. They're all very respectful. But I looked at this guy and I said, he's doing something with his balls. And they were very big balls. I want to say this now. Not low-hanging balls, but like pillowing around his penis, which I couldn't see. So then I thought, oh, maybe his balls are hurting. But then I later found out as the cops arrived that guy had jumped the fence into nudie camp. And I'm like, they'll just let you in. Just sign your name.
Wow. That's the plot of a paranoid thriller right there.
But I knew it. I said, I thought the way he's rubbing his testicles, it just looks different.
Yeah, it looks different. Yeah.
And I was right. And Greg and I went to an indoor skydiving facility.
Okay.
That's right.
While also, was that also a
naked town?
No,
we needed the material to keep us afloat.
Right, it's hard.
We needed that friction.
Yeah.
What have you been doing?
I have been cleaning my house and cleaning my yard.
Because you're off for the summer.
I am off for the summer. Doing a bunch of cleaning. We went to Legoland for a few days. That was fun. Okay. Some Lego, some land.
And were they just like, did they make you go barefoot and step on a bunch of errant Legos strewn around? Is that like one section of the park where there
is? So in the hotel, there's this like giant Lego play area, and I mean, if you weren't wearing shoes, it would be the stepping on Lego nightmare. It is something else.
There's just like one section of the park where kids can shove them up their noses, and you're like, this is a safe space for choking on a Lego. Okay, great. That's what I thought. I wish it was Legolas Land. What would that be? Just snowboarding down. Thank you very much. Down a mountain.
They should do a crossover version for Lord of the Rings and Lego called Legolas Land.
Peter Jackson got him on the line.
You can buy a Lego Barad-dûr for like $1,000 at the Lego store, which is pretty cool.
And did you?
No. I mean, not that I wouldn't, but I have nowhere to put it in my house. So, that's kind of why. There's no logical place where it would be a good sort of decorative piece in my home.
I get it
right now. But if I weren't married and lived in Brooklyn still in an apartment, would have done that.
You'd be married. You'd be married to Legos.
If
I were single. Oh golly! Well, I know I've done more things, but I really want to talk about this movie.
I have too, but let's move on to
that shouldn't be hidden from public view.
Summer fun, because nothing says fun summertime like fun summer crime.
I mean, that's all day, every day for me. Just versions of sad crime.
It is, and 99 had a lot of really diverse and interesting romantic comedies, as we found out in the last round, and it had some really great crime thrillers, as we're going to find out in this round and this episode. To launch our series on 1999 crime movies with a bang, we're looking at the 77th highest grossing movie of 1999, released 25 years ago as we record on this day.
Oh my gosh.
July the 9th of 1999, opening in 7th place behind some big movies: new release American Pie, and just released Wild Wild West, Big Daddy, Tarzan, and The General's Daughter. Going on to gross $41 million on a $31 million budget, it stars two of the greatest actors of their generation, Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins, alongside one of the queens of 1999, Joan Cusack, who we've already discussed. The highest grossing woman of 1999, Joan Cusack, having been in 2 of the top 10 movies of the year. Hope Davis, Spencer Treat Clark, Robert Gossett, and Dennis the Menace, parentheses, 1993 himself.
That's
Jason
right. I
Gamble.
knew I recognized that cowlick.
Mm-hmm. Directed by acclaimed music video director, including Pearl Jam's Jeremy. Mark Pellington, with a script from future Oscar nominee Ehren Kruger and a score by David Lynch's personal composer, Angelo Badalamenti. Tonight, we are discussing the paranoid crime thriller Arlington Road. So, Jen, you got us hyped up for this description.
I'm excited.
What's Arlington Road about?
Maybe I flew in too close to the sun. Okay. Arlington Road is a 1999 psychological thriller that asks the question, what if the terrorists are right? It also asks,
all right.
Well, it also asks, what's in the box? And that box over there. It stars Jeff Bridges as Michael Faraday, a professor at George Washington University in D.C. who teaches a class on his wife's murder. Boy, does that seem unethical. When we meet Faraday, he is saving the life of his new neighbor's son, whose hand was blown off while setting off fireworks in the patriotic month of March. His neighbors, played by Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack, initially seemed too good to be true, but soon Bridges begins to suspect that Robbins is more than a structural engineer, adding another Gap location to the Reston Mall, which, by the way, is actually the Reston Town Center and is described as a European-style outdoor shopping center. I've been there. Oh. Is Robbins actually part of a terrorist cell, or is he just a guy who can sneak into a microfiche room or a backyard without issue? He's very tall. How is this happening? Is Bridges right, or is he just paranoid and obsessed with his wife's murder? So much so that he brings his class on a field trip so they can stare at the spot where she was killed. Not gonna lie, I would love that class. More will be revealed in today's episode of Arlington Road. I can't stop. I was going to write a whole song about the movie and replace, but then I thought, is the FCC going to get on the horn? I don't know, but I was ready to rewrite that song to be about Arlington Road.
I see.
Stop doing it.
I didn't go Lindsey Buckingham. I have like on Arlington Road. You know, I got Jim Blossom.
Yeah. That's strange for me not to go to the 90s, but sometimes
this is why I'm surprised. I thought we were going to make some Jim Blossom jokes, but I guess
you know what? I just listened to Anthony Michael
Lindsey
Hall
Buckingham
on that goddamn Dana Carvey, David Spade.
Oh yeah. Well, my wife listens to every day. Yeah.
You know, that song was in my head because of National Lampoon's.
Sure.
Holiday Road. Okay.
Holiday Road.
Let's get into it. Let's get into some. What do people think about it? Do they love it as much as me?
Though it got drowned out in a very crowded field, Arlington Road was largely well received by critics with a 63% Rotten Tomato score and a 65 Metacritic score. Kruger was also praised for his screenplay and was handpicked by the Weinsteins to write Scream 3 based on Kevin Williamson's treatment for the film. We won't dwell on who picked him out, but you know. I guess somebody was like, hey, you have the same last name as Wes Craven's greatest creation. You should probably write a movie for him.
I mean, that's why I would sum into that.
Kevin Thomas's review in the Los Angeles Times is graded a 90, and he wrote ominously, the makers of Arlington Road have, in sum, brought all the cinematic talent and craft, including, crucially, those of virtuoso film cinematographer Bobby Bukowski and inspired composer Angelo Badalamenti. They could muster to lay bare a dark undertow in American life that, if left unaddressed, will surely proliferate at increasing peril to everyone. So, you know, should have read that review, I guess. Most of the positive reviews are more reserved, coming in at a score of 70, like Rita Kempley in the Washington Post, who writes, quote, Arlington Road gives suburbanites something to worry about other than the daily commute, magnet schools, and crabgrass. Set in an antiseptic corner of Reston, this paranoid thriller suggests that those innocuous folks next door, the ones with the new satellite dish, are really right-wing conspirators, which again, you know, Rita...
I don't think they're right-wing.
I hope you saw what happened 25 years from now. They're a little of both. Though a thematically ambitious and deftly acted thriller, the film is also shockingly cold-blooded and not a little reactionary. There's more than a hint of McCarthyism in the ham-fisted subtitle, Fear Thy Neighbor. Harsher critics fault the movie's implausibility and eventual steering from a taut suspense thriller into an action spectacle, like Michael Wilmington in the Chicago Tribune, who called it, quote, a classy but over-contrived topical thriller about bomb plots and anti-government groups, and Roger Ebert giving the film 2 out of 4 stars and calling Arlington Road, quote, a conspiracy thriller that begins well and makes good points, but it flies off the rails in the last 30 minutes.
That's the best part. It's insane.
It is insane, and we'll talk about whether or not the insanity of it works. But joining us to do so is the world's biggest Arlington Road fan, although maybe not anymore. Now we might have some competition here.
It'll still be you.
With Jen. He is a lawyer. He lives in one of my favorite neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And he does film stuff. And he loves Arlington Road. And he is Matt Belenky. How are you doing, Matt? Lovely to have you.
Jen, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. And
Matt, are you allowed to say what kind of lawyer you are?
Because
I would love to chat with a defamation attorney, but we can do that off mic. Or not, we can still do it off mic.
Sure.
For free. But go ahead.
Pro bono here. I'm a tax lawyer, the most exciting field, obviously.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What happens if you don't pay your taxes for 2 years? Asking for someone, not me.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should ask Tim Robbins, because
hello. Well, not Tim Robbins, but his character. But
that's right.
Still,
not Tim Robbins, the man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why you love this movie, Matt? Because it has tax lawyer related things?
That's a great question. I think after The Firm, this is the only movie that tax law seems semi-sexy at all.
I don't want to get us on a tangent, but I think about the soundtrack to The Firm, that chaotic piano, jazz piano. I think about it all the time. When's the last time you guys heard the chaotic jazz piano that's in The Firm? I invite you to revisit it.
I don't know.
Bring it back, because I invite you to revisit it. It's crazy. I love it so much. Okay. Back to Arlington Road and a lot of beautiful gunshots of Washington, D.C., which I appreciated. Somebody lived there.
Well, the director also, Jen, is from Baltimore. So I guess you have a lot.
Guess he didn't want to do it on Druid Hill Avenue, right where I am, and where the band got its name. Thanks.
Matt, let's talk about your work in film as well as in tax lawyering.
Yeah, sure. So I've produced a few indie films. One is called Goodbye Petrushka. It's obviously on Tubi. And
wait, cool. That does sound familiar. Oh,
yeah, it's a fun coming of age movie. If you ever want to see something shot in France, allegedly they shot it in the U.S. to make it look like France. But it's a fun coming of age flick. And then also new ones being released this summer called Magnetosphere by the same director, Nicola Rose, who's really talented and great. And also, I like writing about film. I like guesting a lot of pods, such as this one. And you can read my work on the Gutter Review, specifically if you want to read about obscure 90s, early aughts, neo-noir thrillers, you name it.
Please. Yeah. It's absolutely absurd that you would even suggest that no one in this conversation is interested in that.
Yeah. So, and Massive Cinema, I wrote an article on poker movies, and I have a piece coming out next month on M. Night Shyamalan's new film Trap, which I'm really excited to see. Yeah.
I'm very excited about it. All I've seen so far, because I'm always trying to avoid things, is that he wanted this movie to look and feel like you're actually at a concert. So while you're watching this movie, you are also going to be watching a full concert. Ooh. That's what he said. Now, I don't know if that means we're getting like 10 songs, but this is what he said. And he doesn't, as we all know, fuck around. So if M. Night, that's what I call him, says it, then we're all getting dinner. We're getting dinner and a show. I don't know if you have any thoughts up top just yet, or do you have any sneaky thoughts? Any little?
Well,
wait, have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm already predisposed to liking his work, and this one looks better than the last two, which I kind of like. Knock at the Cabin and Old had some fun stuff too, but just a big M. Night head, and I think he's one of the few B tier genre guys who's getting a hefty budget to work with and delivering on it. consistently in the
Yeah.
last 25 years now. And but yeah, and Josh Hartnett, the Renaissance
Oh, God,
has begun, I think.
he's
The Heart
back.
Renaissance. Yeah,
He's
love
back.
it.
He's back.
I
He's
love it.
back. He's back.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to talk about another podcast on this podcast, but you saying M. Night reminded me of this series that Malcolm Gladwell just did about people. Did you listen to it? Did you obviously listen to his episode too? I want to watch that movie.
Yeah.
I want to watch that movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. Everyone pause. I'm kidding. Go listen to a whole series and then come back and we'll still be here talking about Arlington. Anyway.
Arlington Road. We should also say up top that if you have not seen Arlington Road, we are going to be spoiling the crap out of it. It is a movie that is worth seeing. It is worth not having spoiled for you because it's got some genuine twists and turns and some surprises, and it really does kind of bank on the ending. So, the bad news. Well, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that it's not streaming on any of the streamers, and we can talk about why. The bad guys win. That's why. But the good news is that if you search the internet enough, you can find it pretty easily to watch for free illegally on a bunch of sketchy websites that, as far as I can tell so far, do not load up your viruses on your computer. So, it
was actually a very clean and nice and normal watch, whatever link you
buy the like $5 DVD or whatever from, go buy some physical media that, kids are always talking about physical media.
Do you
go
think
buy that.
This was really pulled because the bad guys won? Because my question is because here's why I asked that. It might have been 2 years before 9/11, but it was 4 years after Oklahoma. So we already had a very similar situation out in the world when someone posited, what if they were right and it was okay or whatever. So do you think it was 9/11 that everyone was like, I don't know about that? I don't know. I find it very strange that this is a legitimately good motion picture. Not even on Prime. When I can't even find it on Prime, we're in trouble.
Not on Prime. You can't even pay someone $4 to watch it. Like that's
crazy.
That's how hard it is to find.
Crazy. Unhinged.
Matt, do you have any idea why it's so hard to find? Do you what's
it's a good question. It's weird because it's the second movie from '99 to have this issue, right? Dogma, which the Weinstein.
Oh yeah,
there he goes again. Kept from being released for kind of rights reasons.
Is this Weinstein? Is this Weinstein's doing?
I wonder if this has some connection to that. But this was a kind of obscure movie because it was. The rights were sold by Polygram to Sony, and the eventual release was through Screen Gems.
Right.
Polygram handled the foreign rights, so there might have been something lost in translation there. But it is strange because this feels like one of those movies that would be on Prime, because I feel like Prime does leave the kind of 90s solid thrillers like State of Grace or movies with high-profile actors that they think people might watch. And that we watch clearly, but otherwise I'm not sure. But this is, I want to talk about this film, or I want to say one thing about this film.
You could say a bunch of things. This is this is really probably should be led by you, a super fan. I'm not kidding. I think that you should do the bulk of the chatting, and John and I will occasionally chime in. And obviously, I will annoy everyone by only making jokes. Why was there a 2-hour shootout with a 9-year-old? Go ahead.
Yeah. Where does this rank on like the child death scenes? This is
they showed that kid dead as hell.
Oh, that was rough. I mean, but somewhere between Pet Sematary and Assault on Precinct 13, this belongs right in that kind of campfire.
I was so shocked. Maybe that's why they pulled that. Can't be right. They're killing kids all the time in movies. They don't. So go ahead. You say something / a lot of things. Most of the things. Go.
No. I just want to say that Jeff Bridges, I consider this film the final piece of his conspiracy trilogy, right?
Okay.
And this begins with Winter Kills, a great movie from '79, William Reichert, that's been re-released recently in a bunch of like indie theaters in New York and LA, because I think Tarantino's been lauding it, and his name's been like, I think he helped restore it or something.
He owns that theater. He owns the Vista in Los Angeles. So Tarantino does. So I bet it was playing at the Vista. So
for sure. Yeah. And the New Bev.
Oh, wait,
I think it was like a new 4K restoration of that movie, and that's a bonkers conspiracy thriller with Anthony Perkins as the villain. I think that's the most silly of the thrillers, and John Huston has a ridiculous role in that as well. But it's worth seeing that movie. And number 2 in that trilogy would be Cutter's Way, released just a year later, I think, in 1980. Maybe the bleakest, close to Arlington Road in terms of bleakness, but John Hurd plays like a one-eyed crazy guy who's convinced there's a conspiracy involving a politician. Jeff Bridges kind of, as his best friend, starts buying into it, and they go down a rabbit hole. And then this movie, right? This is like the 90s version of what the 70s used to do really well with their paranoia thrillers, with Parallax View and The Conversation. This definitely belongs in the pantheon of great conspiracy movies, but it feels ramped up to 1990 just because of like the crazy, crazy editing, the looks of it. And you could tell Mark Pellington was a music video director.
Yes,
right?
you can.
Yep, you sure can.
From the title, for the second that title, that I went, what am I watching right now? What is this? This is like that opening shot followed immediately by that music, which we don't really hear. It's mostly scored, I think. I don't actually, as I'm thinking about this, I can't recall music much at all, but that doesn't mean anything. I've got a very bad memory. But this didn't have like a soundtrack, did it? I don't recall any music other than what must have been scoring it. So that's interesting. Do you think he was like, I'm just trying to distance myself from my music video background, so this motion picture will have no songs? Probably not. Although we did have a rather large budget that went up from like 8 million to 30 million.
There's a couple of songs. So there's the party scene. There's the scene where he comes in and they're like having the weird fucking rave thing, whatever, right? Where he's losing his mind towards the end. But no, mostly it is driven by the score. But it is interesting, like that. This is there was a kind of, along with people like David Fincher and then like Mark Romanek and like there's this. And like Michael Bay, even, right? There's this period in the late 90s, early 2000s where you are seeing these music video directors prominently sort of make their leap into feature films and bringing a lot of that aesthetic along with them. The one gripe that I have with this movie, the one time in rewatching it where I'm like, this isn't doing it for me, is like when it leans too much into letting the music drive the narrative, when it really could kind of scale back and allow the actors to sort of like, drive the intensity of the scene. I love almost everything about this movie, but like when I have my gripes, it's when his sort of like music video sort of aesthetic and sort of tendencies kind of take over the movie. But yeah, it is really cool and interesting that like even like Tom Tykwer, who directed Run the Run, had worked in music videos before.
I mean, that's just an extended music video.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
The whole movie is the most music video movie that ever lived, other than Cool World.
No, yeah, like being a music video director in the 90s was a gateway, essentially, to getting your first or second feature film made, right? Gore Verbinski, Dominic Sena, you mentioned Mark Romanek, Alex Proyas, Antoine Fuqua,
who's from Antoine Fuqua, right? That's a big one. Yeah.
Spike Jonze, obviously.
Spike Jonze. Spike. I know, Mr. Beastie Boys himself.
Yeah, the man, the legend. So, yeah, and Pellington famously, Michael Bay was the guy behind Meatloaf's. A couple of Meatloaf's famous songs. Mark Pellington worked on Jeremy by Pearl Jam. That was kind of his breakthrough moment in 92. And then he worked on One by U2. And he did a lot of work with U2. But yeah, if you look at his body of work, he's kind of a jack of all trades, where his career has consistently been making music videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And especially, we talk about the opening credits of this movie, where, I mean, it's funny the moments where they decide to cut in this film. Like, it's Jeff Bridges in the hospital. I don't know his name.
I know.
Boom, boom, cut away.
Drinking water.
Yeah, drinking water with the ghostly images of Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack hanging out. And great use of Joan Cusack, who is playing a version of the Addams Family.
Yes, I was gonna say she's playing
Yeah.
Debbie. She's playing
Yep.
like her like proto Debbie. I was like, here are the seeds of Debbie. She
Totally.
plays like innocent, creepy so very well.
Can I say like the scariest moment in this movie to me and like the most haunting image is like the look on Joan Cusack's face right before she kills Hope Davis.
Phone call. Yep.
Oh my god! And like
Yep.
the way her mouth just sort of like curls in a little bit,
Her
and
eyes died
quivers.
so quickly.
Oh,
In that scene. I also want
Joan.
I know we're
killing
going to
me.
jump around because that's just how it works. What do
Yeah.
we think about the numerous times Jeff Bridges was bathed in a single pool of light? I kept thinking to myself, there's Starman. There he is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like so many times he was suddenly there was shrouded in darkness except for one single light on Jeff Bridges, where we're supposed to feel like he's being interrogated or he's alone. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, I'm getting so deep into but still, I think it was maybe supposed to be like, this man is absolutely alone and what he's doing right now. But there were multiple times in different places that he just had a single beam of light on him. Couldn't get over it. And it was like not natural in some moments. It was obviously very theatrical. And I was like, what's going on here? Is this Starman?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's driving sort of the idea of of him being isolated and a protagonist, like that where it like feels like the world is coming down on him, right? And that's a very sort of, again, like visual kind of music video shorthand cue way of saying that. That's sort of what I got out of it.
Yeah, no, I thought this film made great use of his eyes and expressions, which is something The Big Lebowski did well. Also, the year before that, the Coen Brothers, where that movie was also really focusing. There are a lot of close-up shots of his eyes just extending and growing bigger. And early on in his career, I think directors are really focusing on his sort of masculinity and the hot factor, right? The slick back hair, the mustaches, the kind of cool, bravado that his characters so often used and had. But here it's kind of, he's got some wear and tear on him now. Jeff Bridges, I think he's probably in his 50s or late 40s.
He's 50 years old and looks way
good.
too fucking good to be 50
looks good as shit. And that girl, she's mid-20s. So, but I do think he's probably supposed to be 35 or 40. But still, that's so crazy. It's insane that his father's Lloyd Bridges. How are these two men even related? It's also wild that The Big Lebowski was a year earlier, because this movie feels like it was much further in the past, and he made his way to The Big Lebowski, which obviously I think
it does. Yeah.
Most people would say they like that movie more. They're wrong, but it does feel like somehow if you flipped the release date for those two movies, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They made him cut his hair for this. He's a dad, suburban dad now. He's got to cut his hair. Just take it seriously.
It's Reston, Virginia.
It is. I've been to Reston, Virginia. It's not known for much. It'd be a hell of a drive to George Washington University. I will say that.
I think also, like, one of the things that the movie does really well, and this is about casting as much as anything else, is that it does use what is sort of physically available of Jeff Bridges really excellently, and like emphasizes those facial features and those expressions, as you say, and does the same thing with Tim Robbins. And Tim Robbins, one of the things about him as an actor, and just like the way that he is that he doesn't move his mouth very much. So like when he talks, he sort of minimally uses his mouth. Like he will say words without using his mouth, like moving his mouth if he doesn't have to. He's kind of always done that. And a lot of the shots in this movie like really emphasize that and make it super creepy. They make it look like it's a deceptive thing. It's just what Tim Robbins does, but it really is excellent at like highlighting this quirk of his kind of physicality and turning it into something that is like sinister and deeply unsettling, which this movie is. I'd seen it before, but I was like deeply unsettled in a way that I don't think I probably was the first time I saw it, because that was a long time ago and America was a different place at the time. yeah, it's not an easy watch. It is very tense and way too relevant to modern issues. When was the first time you saw the movie? Did you see it? Were you one of the few people who went to go see it when it came out? Because of course it was buried again behind like blockbuster movies that were like all the rage, like never made it above, I think, like 7th place in the box office. I remember seeing it specifically because Ehren Kruger had gotten Scream 3, and I was like, well, I got to go see this movie that he got famous for. So I probably saw it in like 2000, probably around like 9/11 time, right? A couple years later. But what's your history with it?
Yeah, I remember seeing it around, I think, 9/11 on TV. I had a bunch of TV channels that I was watching a lot of movies that would freak me out. Like I remember seeing Species from a young age.
Hell yeah.
I was like 6 and I was on TV, and that movie cursed me forever.
How'd you feel about women after that? Were you like, oh, I guess they're just a bunch of soul-sucking murderers, bitches? No, I'm kidding. Species, it's a perfect film.
Yeah, no.
A+.
Michael Madsen, pretty cool in that.
Yeah,
and
Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley, great, amazing cast. Alfred Molina, Forsyth, yeah. But no, I definitely saw this on one of the movie channels, or it was like a TNT USA thing, and it was frequently played on those channels. Right, this was the era of Along Came a Spider, Kiss the Girls.
Yes.
After the Morgan Freeman, Ashley Judd rotation of films, all of which were kind of the same movie, but pretty good.
Except for her like foray into the rom-com world. For me, that's that movie she did with Hugh Jackman. Greg Kinnear also in it. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out because I like Kate and Leopold with Hugh Jackman.
Oh, I love that movie.
But this was one of those movies on. I think at the time I watched it, I thought whatever of it, but I rewatched it, I think 4 or 5 years ago. It was on Showtime or something. And it kind of struck a chord with me. I was like, wow, this is a lot heavier. The ending's a lot darker than I remember. And this was dealing with themes that are quite prevalent today. And they were around when the movie came out too. And and the late 90s was kind of a strange time for Hollywood movies, because I feel like a lot of 90s thrillers would use Arab countries as the main villains, or Russians, where I'm from originally, but which I get, I get we're not great sometimes. But
neither is America. You're okay.
Yeah, Arab.
Like anybody's home countries on this call, or
no, that's true. But if you look at True Lies, The Siege, The Peacemaker, there were some kind of questionable choices being made with how other countries were being represented as villains. And I think the liberties that filmmakers were taking, I think at the time we kind of accepted it. Looking back, it's kind of, The Siege for especially comes to mind in terms of kind of being problematic. But this movie was one of the few that I think dealt with domestic terrorism, and the fact that maybe your next door neighbor is the bad one and scary one. And American Beauty, which was released the same year, hasn't aged well as a film, but was also tackling like suburbia and Americana, and both were, I think, derivative in some way of Blue Velvet, which Mark Pellington listed as one of his favorite movies ever. So, and that kind of comes through, I think, a lot in this film. Like the studio version of Blue Velvet.
Well, using David Lynch's composer, I think, was a obvious kind of nod to that very thing. I think of like the way that when we saw domestic terrorism presented in the 90s, you think of something like Speed, right? And it's some person's like personal grudge, right? There was a sort of, as the 90s progressed, a kind of a cultural awareness of what domestic terrorism looked like in the form of like Waco and
Ruby
Oklahoma
Ridge.
City, but then also like anti-government violence in Ruby Ridge and Waco and so on and so forth, right? And also like federal overreach and all that sort of thing. and I suspect that like a lot of like, it just didn't seem like good fodder for movies. Like you can make, you know, Russians and Arabs bad guys because like that's far away and you're not critiquing anything that's sort of, you know. But this is the first movie that I can really think of that really takes it seriously, and I think a lot of people at the time weren't taking it seriously. I think they sort of looked at it as a quote unquote paranoid thriller, whereas I think today 25 years later, maybe the dynamics of it are slightly different, but the idea that, you know, you could be living in the same neighborhood as someone who you're basically about to be on the opposite side of a civil war with, like, is not at all right, paranoid and over the top and crazy and strange. And like, I remember the first time that I watching it in the context of like, oh, I kind of see what they're doing. They're talking about like Ruby Ridge and Waco and so forth, and they're bringing it sort of into mainstream America. But it felt very outlandish. It no longer feels outlandish. It is kind of an outlandish movie, but like in terms of what it is talking about and its premise, it feels very prescient and feels very like immediate, and that's, I think, why it's more unsettling now than maybe it was 20 something years ago.
I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised that a movie that was released 4 years after Oklahoma, which was so clearly describing crimes that sounded eerily similar to Oklahoma, where they were talking about the children were killed.
Yeah. It's the same.
I mean, we couldn't even like mention an airplane after 9/11 in a movie for a very long time, and I was quite surprised by the timing of this, and I don't know. Yeah, seems like we were slightly more accepting of our terrorist attacks before 9/11, because I don't know why, but 4 years later they were like, what if we just had like a Timothy McVeigh type? I mean, he even had almost a similar haircut, that brushed cut.
Sure.
McVeigh had as well.
It was
not that they were
clearly
trying to do
right.
that, but
and they turned Ruby Ridge into like Copper Creek or something like that, right? It's like it's exactly the same thing, though, right? It's the same.
Only the names have changed. Someone said that.
Yeah.
Someone said that. So I don't know what that says about us. If we were either, in 1999, was this post Columbine? Not that it matters, but sometimes it does. What was
it came out post Columbine. Yeah, July 9th. Today.
That was only a few months after another disaster, and while they might not be similar, it's still.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone was still sort of thinking about this like tragedy. I guess I'm very surprised that were we less, what's the word I'm looking for? Sensitive? That's not it back then. I just think of nowadays how something would have been pulled or not even made in such close proximity to horrific disasters. I say we double down. I say they're right. The second a disaster happens, we do it like a Netflix true crime. And even as the crime is still unfolding, we've cranked out a documentary. We don't even have the verdict yet. And here comes the documentary. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in real time.
There aren't like 4 Karen Reed Netflix documentaries.
I think that
already.
Netflix has a Minority Report situation where they're predicting crimes and now they're just making movies about them, and Tom Cruise is in a room somewhere just waving his arms around, and bing bang boom, Bob's your uncle. There's your next documentary. Netflix.
Matt, how old were you when this movie came out? How old were you in 99?
Oh, is this gonna hurt me? Oh, this is gonna hurt me.
Probably 10.
Okay.
So you know.
So then you were 12 in 9/11. So that's pretty. So like the whole sort of America terrorism thing was pretty formative for you, right? I mean, as a, you know, like a squarely a millennial, I guess, right? How do you, like, when you look at this movie now? How does that? Because like Jen and I have like 10 years on you, and so we can take a more of a. We had a bunch of other shit that happened beforehand. So, you know, by the time 9/11 happened, we're already cynical. How did this sort of, like, how does this play for you in terms of like your history of your own sort of like,
guys, really quick,
exposure to world events and stuff? What? Make a wish? What happened?
It was 9/11, and I was holding the phone up to show you guys the time. Go ahead.
Oh my God!
I was derailing the podcast for yet another 9/11 joke. All right, go ahead.
I know, it's fine.
Never forget. Yeah.
No, okay, never forget. Yeah, no. So as as someone who's like 10, 12 years old, when the terrorism thing is all kind of happening, like how does it like emotionally work with your life? If that
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
sense.
I remember the first time an event happened on TV that I was aware of was Columbine. I remember being glued on CNN
Oh,
that day, which was that a few years prior to that, right?
That was
two,
no, Columbine was
two
99.
years. Yeah, it was
It was
April
April of
20th,
99.
1999.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So
Mm.
that was the first time the media and a horrific act kind of intersected. I remember
Mm.
hearing about Kosovo. I remember telling my mom on a drive home, I was worried I was going to get drafted, and I was like, oh, I'll get out of the
Oh
draft because I have
no!
allergies.
In the kid army? Oh
Yeah,
no!
exactly. Yeah, the small soldiers contingent. But so that I was starting to become aware of things that you heard on the radio or CNN or whatever. But and then 9/11 happened. I remember 2 weeks before that, I slept over at my friend's place in Battery Park, which was like right under the World Trade Center. Literally, you
Sure.
could see it
Yep.
through the window.
Jesus.
And
Yep.
we watched What Lies Beneath at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. on a Sunday.
That's a great time to watch that movie.
Solid time to see Michelle Pfeiffer look through these kind of fence peepholes
She looks so
her makeup.
great.
Solid movie and underrated. And yeah, so and then 9/11 happens, and I remember that day really distinctly, getting picked up from school and walking with our neighbors who also went to our school, who are our friends, to this place nearby in Pittsburgh. But yeah, I think I don't know, the moment of politics, I think, was starting to make more sense with maybe the films I was watching, and vice versa. I think they were referencing each other, and I was starting to understand how and what people were interpreting, and what sort of phobias were being released as a result.
Mhm.
But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, this is a movie that's on its face kind of seems like schlocky and not saying much, especially to someone who's younger when you're first seeing it. But when you start to peel the onion, there's, as we've noted already, there's a lot of depth to it, that was both informing the moment and then also foreshadowing things to come. And The Rock is another movie where Ed Harris plays like a domestic terrorist who's mad at the government for whatever reason. But
Sure. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
kind of surprising and neat to see big budget movies and talented directors have villains who
Mhm.
had this backstory, and I think there was something to it. There was something in the air, and this movie also rings true with like the JFK conspiracy, which continues, I think, to fascinate.
That's patient zero for conspiracies. Before that, we didn't have any, and then after that, it's all we had.
I there's two things I want to quickly say, and then I do actually want to talk about a couple of the actual elements of the movie as well, because I have some questions that I want answered. But so one of them, and I think this is interesting. So I guess this must have fallen through or whatever, but in 2021, it was announced that Ehren Kruger was working on a television adaptation of Arlington Road for Paramount Plus, which I think, because as I was watching this again, one of the things that I kept thinking of was The Americans, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, this would work. The premise of this would work really well as like a modern day The Americans, and as like a prestige drama on Paramount Plus. I haven't heard anything about it since 2021. I assume that means it's not happening. I don't know
Well,
what happens with
Skydance
television.
just bought Paramount, and they are
Well,
very interested in a shit ton. It's a great deal. I've been reading and listening to a lot of podcasts about it, and it sounds like a really good deal.
okay.
And I can tell you full stop that their new owners are very excited and interested in original programming. So who knows? Maybe someone will resurrect
Is
it.
a TV adaptation of a movie original programming?
Yeah,
Isn't that by
it's one.
definition not original programming?
No, I
But
think
no,
it
I
is.
know, yeah, I know what
Of
you mean.
course
I
it
know what
is.
you mean.
Yeah, I think it
I'm
is.
just being
They're
facetious.
not they don't wanna do, like, the same old, same old. So who knows? Maybe someone will dust it off from whatever weird little shelf it's fallen behind, and
Maybe,
it'll see the
maybe.
light of day again. I'm excited
Well,
to check
Matt,
it out.
as this as this being your precious baby, what do you think of the idea of adapting this as a TV series?
As someone who has a tough time watching shows, period, and I feel like I'm good for one. I'm the wrong person to ask, but I'm good for one miniseries a year. I think that's my quota.
And what will it be this year, or have you already done it?
Good cue. Oh, I think it's Presumed Innocent. I'm halfway there.
Is that, speaking of cinematic adaptations to a series, is it good? Is the Gyllenhaal good? Because guess what was not great? The Roadhouse reboot. Now, he didn't stink it up. It was Conor McGregor. But anyway. McGregor. So the series is good. Should I watch it? Because I thought about it.
Pretty good. Really good, like quirky, going forward, bizarro supporting performances that knock it out. Like, I've never seen a few of the actors, and they're incredible in it. And it's got, the usual suspects. I feel like Bill Camp is in every prestige miniseries.
I fucking love Bill Camp so much.
He's awesome in this. He gets to be really funny also, and like let loose.
Oh, if he's in it, I'm watching it. I didn't know he was in it.
He's terrific in it.
Yeah,
sold.
Bill Camp, Peter Sarsgaard, and I don't know the actors.
Oh, yeah, because Jake was like, "Can we get my brother-in-law in this?" And they said, "Yeah, buddy, put him in."
Remember Garden State? Does anyone remember that?
Do you guys remember? I don't want to get us on a tangent, but does anyone remember that SNL sketch where it was when Sarsgaard was hosting and he was supposed to be speaking at a pirate convention, and he finds out by the end that the only reason why they had him comes because they could all say Sarsgaard, and it was honestly so fucking. That's what I think about when I hear that man's name, and I think given his body of work that he would agree that's correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Wow. Now I feel like I want to suggest some other shows for you to watch, but seeing like maybe just like 90s style psychological thrillers are your favorite. So Presumed Innocent. You know what though? The Diplomat with Kerry Russell on Netflix was very good. You might like that.
I saw a few episodes. See, that's my other signature move is to watch like 3 episodes
and forget.
And then like, I like Kerry Russell, and then the British guy, he's all right too. Who's playing American.
Yeah. God bless. They can't let him have an accent to save his life. He and Christian Bale are fighting to be themselves.
That's right. But I wouldn't mind. I could see this. This would be like a miniseries I'd actually watch, and I think there could be something more fun to do. The Americans was another show I couldn't. And it's funny we talk about that because I went on a huge Noah Emmerich tangent last night on YouTube because I love the actor so much, and I think he's been pigeonholed in cop roles most of his career when he's really great when he's like Truman Show, Jim Carrey's best friend in the Truman Show. Like he has this like sweetness and quaintness to him that
he's got resting asshole face when he wants it.
Oh yeah, he's good. He's good at being the douche for sure.
Matt, I got to ask you this then, because speaking of Noah Emmerich, which is it's a sentence a lot of people say. Speaking of Noah Emmerich, so Matt, you live in New York City right now. Do you have, and you might not even know what this is, but do you have a celebrity stalker? Do you know what that is?
Is that a person I look like who's stalking me?
No, it's a famous person you see all the time.
I do.
Okay. So everybody in New York has this one random famous person who they just happen to see all the time, right?
Yeah.
My celebrity stalker when I lived in New York City was Noah Emmerich, who I saw all the fucking time. Every neighborhood, everywhere I went.
Do you think he recognized you as well?
I don't know. But like one time he was on the subway, he was clearly reading for an audition. Like he's clearly reading a script for a part. And I just like wanted to go talk to him and whatever. I've never actually talked to him. I've just seen him 1,000 fucking times in New York City. But I love Noah Emmerich.
I think you should have sidled up to him and been like, do you want to run lines? Or...
I think he would have, like, I feel like it's the kind, this is before the Americans as well, so I feel like at the time, he was the kind of actor who would have appreciated being recognized.
You're like, I've got 4 or 5 stops. Do you want to run lines?
And then after the Americans, I think he was more famous. But yeah, he's my celebrity
still
stalker.
A character actor to a lot of people, which is...
It definitely is a character actor, but like I think he's much more well-known now than he was in like 2003 or 4, whenever this was. So
wait, so who's your celebrity, Matt?
So it used to be Amber Tamlin and David
Oh,
Cross.
sure.
No.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They're a
Jeez.
couple.
A couple of
But
insufferable run-ins, if ever there. I'm just kidding.
oh yeah,
I
but
love. Listen, I love David Cross, but let's be honest
I do
about
yeah,
that. Them.
the A Train, yeah. But they kind of remove themselves from sight, and Paul Dano is the most seen person.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a good one.
Dano.
That's a
Okay.
quality.
Yeah,
That's a
Paulie
quality
D,
one.
who looks like any
Yeah.
Wow.
looking guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just a guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
He
really
looks
Yeah.
like every other guy in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a good
good.
one. That's a good one.
I'm trying to quote one a week. I'm trying to find a good moment to sneak in there to use it. It's I'm just I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral, can't understand what I mean, but you soon will.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm there.
It's been.
It's been.
Yeah.
It's man.
It's
Um,
been.
the,
Woo!
the sort of relevant note on that song is it took me a while to realize that, like Harrison Ford, I'm getting frantic as a reference to the Great Polanski movie,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
which is still on,
Sure is.
Like Sting, but the best is the next line. Like Sting, I'm tantric.
Like
right.
Sam Tantric.
That was an early time to reference Sting's love of tantric sex.
Tantra.
Which
Yeah.
tells me they must have known it. It's not as if he must have been talking about it in interviews that you could read in a magazine, because we didn't have the internet to have that one picture of Sting we've all seen stretched out in front of the fireplace, for God's sakes. But like
Well,
Sting.
we could spend a whole podcast going over the lyrics to one week and the theory that it's a confession to a murder, which I think is an interesting theory and probably right if you listen to the lyrics. But let's talk about the movie now. So I have a question for both of you. The beginning of the movie is very shocking, very well done, very music video as well, right? A lot of these like jump cuts and a lot of oversaturation and everything else, and it's very, very cool. Okay. So the premise is, and like again, one of the things that when you're watching this movie, one of the things that you have to sort of just like kind of get over is like the sheer number of coincidences to make the plot work. Just forget about it, right? Like just go with what it's doing, and it's a paranoid thriller, and don't worry about all that stuff. Okay. So my question is, what was really good? Like what really actually happened to that kid? Because so the story that they give him is that he's like setting off rockets or whatever, or like fireworks or whatever it is, and he blew his thumb off, right? And that's why Jeff Bridges finds him in the middle of the street and then takes him to the hospital, which begins the whole like them kind of ingratiating themselves into his life. But it seems like it was a setup, and I never really quite understood how that's all supposed to work. So Matt, you've seen it. This is your movie. Do you have a theory about what's going on at the beginning there, or is it really as simple as they said it was?
I think they were experimenting with bombs or something in their backyard. I don't know what they were. I think they were doing some bad stuff, or the kid came upon a bomb, or some type of explosive, and then he got, nearly maimed or really badly injured, and was somehow able to run away from the house, without Tim Robbins or John Cusack chasing him. So that's all to say, I'm not sure, but it is a startling and one heck of a way to open a movie. That opening shot, the credits was definitely like most 90s thrillers. They were trying to copy, I think, what Fincher did in Seven with that use of film stock and all that stuff. But the kid gets injured. And the other thing that like Jeff Bridges doesn't seem to realize is how creepy the kids are.
Okay, I wrote that down. I said it's that trope where either the kids are really creepy or they're doing that thing where we're also just supposed to like, are we supposed to believe that this creepy family has also birthed creepy children? Like the scene when he pretends that he got locked out of his house is where I first thought like
the daughters. Yeah.
Why do movies love to
Village
do
of the
this?
Damned?
Are these children really creepy, or is Jeff Bridges so far into his own theory that everything seems creepy, or is this family so contrived that they're also just raising little tiny terrorists, so they're sort of just pouring all of their ideological wackiness into them, and now they're just not even human, maybe. I mean, to that not to get off that point, but I do think that these people are so committed to their goal that they probably blew their son's own thumb off, and then, because he's already been indoctrinated, he's old enough to have been indoctrinated, because
That's what I think.
we don't get much into the fact that they'd been watching him for a while. It's just that quick cut at the end of Tim Robbins going through all the Jeff Bridges stuff and burning the photos. And I wish we had gotten a little bit more of like how long they'd been tracking Jeff Bridges. Like, did they have his wife killed 3 years ago? I don't know. How far back does it go? But I do think that they're so singularly minded that they would have no problem blowing off their kid's thumb and being like, okay, this is part of your duty. This is what we believe in. Now this is what you have to do. Walk down the middle of the road. Jeff Bridges comes home at this time. We'll see you at the hospital. Psychotic. That's my thought. So I think those children are all just little tiny terrorists.
That's another thing that like I could never decide if I wanted them to answer these questions or if I liked it better without them. Like I like the daughters who are like very creepy in Village of the Damned when they open the door, but like they don't seem to be that way in any other scene. They seem to be like perfectly normal, well-adjusted children. And like, are they in on it, or like like? Is the son in on it? I kind of think the son is in on it, but it's like weird that like all the kids.
He was probably told to befriend Bridges' son. Like, whatever you do, make that kid your friend. That was his job.
And Spencer Treat Clark is great in this too, by the way. And like he was always great in everything he was in.
Is that Baby Unbreakable?
It's Baby Unbreakable, yeah, and also Baby Now. Paul Mescal. He grew up into Paul Mescal in Gladiator 2, and so I just watched the Gladiator 2 trailer today, which is rad.
I'm excited.
And they've replaced Spencer Treat Clark like digitally with like the new actor playing the young version.
Let him get in there. He's built.
It's so funny, but yeah, he's perfect for this role as well, because Spencer Treat Clark has this like, I don't know, this really like intense naivety, like as a young actor. He's there's something about his eyes that's very like both kind of like creepy, but also incredibly vulnerable and naive, and it just works really, really well as like in this role of this child who's being used as a pawn in this like fucked up terrorist scheme. But
I do want to say, I guess I didn't realize that 1999 the cell phones were. I had. Oh God, did I have that Nokia brick? I think I might have had that Nokia.
Yeah, Matt was just gesturing the Nokia brick. They were expensive, the like black ones that he has. But that moment where she's like, "You forgot your phone," I'm like, "He has a phone."
I know. Well, here's the thing. Why was he in the opening scene? I thought to myself, oh, this also works because they didn't have cell phones. That's why he's screaming for help in the street. We'll come to realize, well, he did have a cell phone. Why wasn't he calling the ambulance from his cell phone while that child was bleeding to death in his arms?
Doesn't know how to use it.
Oh, well.
Yeah, well, on that note as well, I don't know if you guys paid attention to this, but I couldn't help but laugh that most of this movie ages really well. But the fact is, like, you're about an hour into this psychological thriller, and it's a guy looking for answers, and like the fifth thing he tries is the internet. and when he does, and I love this part, he types in the name, like last name first with a comma. And I'm like, you don't have to do that to search engines. It's just looking for those words.
I love to see it. But you know what? Now that Google's so fucked up, that Yahoo did a better job. It was like, oh, let me find all these words. I'm like, Google couldn't do it anymore.
14 results. Wow.
You'll never find it. Google will go, here's a shitty AI answer, 20 sponsored content bullshit. And then if you're lucky, a Distractify article written by Jen Tisdale. And then something else. Matt, thoughts on anything? Or just, I think we might be at the point where just let something come into your head. I mean, I would like to spend a couple minutes on the shootout on that scene. That was very crazy for me personally, as told through his class. But Matt, are any thoughts entering your head right now?
First of all, I want to be in that class because they actually take a field trip to a shootout site. That was pretty cool. And
there's that one guy at the end who's like, he took us to this place, like, it's something about his wife. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what? He didn't even
something
mention
about his wife.
He didn't even mention it was his wife. That guy is retconning. He just shared the details while looking probably
A plus field trips on
far
that,
more
on
sad
that
than he should. But yeah.
Anyway, carry on, Matt. Carry on. Sorry.
No, the one thing that looking back, like I wish they would have done more is, I feel like this movie focused on like one thing the whole time, and that's the fact that he had a name change. Right, like it kept coming back to that.
Yeah.
Like that was like the one thing driving the plot. For Jeff,
which is totally not that suspicious. I don't think.
Yeah, and like everyone's telling him like it's not suspicious, right? Hope Davis is like, all right, so what? He didn't even get arrested for it.
No.
I think when
she's like, I've got to get to Succession. Can we wrap this up?
I really got to be in About Schmidt in a couple of years.
I've got plans.
I got Dermot Mulroney today. But like that was kind of a screenplay thing that like, developed something more than just that would have been better, right? That would have driven the plot a little and made it more juicy. And the other thing is like in these films, and I felt the same way with Out of Time, the Denzel movie, and I feel like they could get better supporting actors for some of these roles in the sense that to have them kind of, memorable names, maybe like a John Turturro or, I don't know, I watched The Deep End recently on Criterion's Neo-Noir collection, and that had great like supporting roles from people who are like, oh wait, I saw that guy in The Game or something. I feel like this movie would have benefited from that. And I'm not talking about the big four with Robbins, Hope Davis, Bridges, and Cusack, but the other actors, like they could have got some like hammy people.
Robert Gossett.
Yeah, Robert Gossett's good, but
give me an Oliver Platt. I'm always going to take a Platt. Give me an over
Throw
the
me
top
a Platt.
Oliver Platt. That was probably that would have been too much comedy, I'm sure, but bring it.
Yeah, I agree. Like there aren't enough people in this movie, and like one of the weird things about it is that it feels like it just needs to populate itself with a little bit more of like a world, because it ends up feeling pretty low stakes at the end. So that by the time, spoiler alert, by the way, by the time the FBI building blows up in the end, I'm like, but there's only like 9 people who live in this world. So it's hard for me to get really sort of emotional about it. I understand that the sort of intention behind this movie is to keep it claustrophobic and very sort of like highly focused on these characters, but even the sort of like terrorist accomplices as these sort of like mute weirdos who just press buttons and like look suspicious at certain
the amount of furtive glances. This was a sea of furtive glances outside of a van.
And it's a very 90s. It's a very 90s thriller thing to do, but like it would be a better movie if. And again, like Ehren Kruger as well is a very novice screenwriter at the time, so there is that as well. But like, if it populated itself, if it felt a bit more lived in, I think it would have made the movie better. But I still love it. Still a great movie.
Yeah, no, and it won a Nickel Fellowship. Right, this was like Kruger's breakout into Hollywood, and then he became kind of the guy. And it's funny that he went on to work and do the Transformers movies. Top Gun Maverick, The Ring. I feel like
Maverick.
He went on to work for these movies that you don't necessarily consider like the screenwriter. It's not the first person you mention when you talk about a big budget movie, which is interesting, right? Like the screenwriters, because usually it's like 3 or 4 work on them. Maybe that's why.
Or 7 or 8 or God, too many.
Totally. And this film seems the most kind of tightly made, like you said, and also there were a bunch of scenes that rewatching it still works, right? But like we're picking out things. I guess I was nitpicking on rewatch because I was like, it could be even better right? Like even like the Boy Scouts thing, like when he realizes when he goes to the Boy Scout thing.
Yeah.
When he hops a plane to they're somewhere, right?
Very quickly.
St.
Yeah.
Louis? Is that where they are? No, where are they? No, he goes to St. Louis for some reason. Oh yeah, to talk to that was a very useless scene. I didn't understand the point of that scene at all. Actually, I think we'd already established at that point that Tim Robbins was a no good Nick. And yet we still had to get on the plane to talk to the terrorist's father to make sure that they were working together, which I guess was helpful. But all I could think of was, now I know Jeff Bridges flew out of Dulles. And let me tell you something about Dulles. There is a shuttle. There is a tram. Even pre 9/11, that was not a fast trip. But okay, Jeff Bridges. Whatever. I pictured him riding, like being in such a hurry. There's a shuttle that goes across the airport. Like it's not indoors. It's like a weird little tram that literally goes across like sections of the runway, and you're all just waiting. And here's Jeff Bridges in a hurry because he wants to talk to this guy's dad. He's probably like, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm just on the tram. That's all I could picture as a person who hates Dulles. Now, I wanted to ask.
Real quick though, because like also like while we're on this, the other thing that just sort of bugged me as a choice was the way the like scout leaders were lit.
They were so like, creepy. I was like, is this a cult? What is happening? I was like, sorry, we sacrificed your son.
Like, they're like a weird indoctrination Nazi group or whatever, but I'm just like, this is a strange choice to like have them lit.
There's a lot of that underlighting, like I'm holding up a flashlight at camp. A lot of that. The lighting here was really doing a lot of lifting. And that's fine. Yeah. Now,
and sometimes it worked really well, and sometimes it was over the top. But like,
yeah, and there are some legitimately funny moments for me personally. This is something that I picked up on that I remembered so clearly from high school. And again, ends up being like, I guess, a tiny plot point. When Brooke starts her car, and I heard that squealing, I went, "Oh, girl, your fan bell's gonna go." That was a thing. I swear to God, in high school, that squealing sound, everybody's car was like, "Your fan belt's about to blow. What is it going on?" That was I don't hear that sound anymore. I don't know if cars are different. I'm sure they are. It's been 25 years. But when that happened, I went, "Oh, fan belt." Like I'm a fucking mechanic, but I recognized it right away. Now, that comes back into play later when she's following the van. But here's what I don't get. Guy in the orange jumpsuit turns around when she starts the car and follows her as she's exiting the parking lot. Why? It was just a screeching fan belt, sir. There was no reason why this man, who's presumably loading yet another bomb into yet another van, would even clock this fan belt. But he followed her car all the way out of the parking lot. And I thought, why? It's just allowed. It's just no, that's very silly. Now, there is a scene at the end where they pan over a marquee and you see that Dirty Work is playing. And I said to myself, is this a heavy-handed message about what's being done here through the Norm Macdonald motion picture Dirty Work? I cackled I laughed so hard. I was very tickled by that. So you think that's the message that was being sent, was this is Dirty Work, but also the movie Dirty Work?
Matt, do you think so? I kind of do.
That was just a really strange transition shot, and I think that was meant to be in St. Louis, like where that Dirty Work was happening. I think, but shout out to Norm Macdonald and Chris Farley.
Yeah,
was that a St. Louis scene? I thought that was
maybe not. Maybe that was that.
I don't remember that was towards the end.
While everything was getting all revved up and they're all like planning their attack. I think that's maybe I gotta rewatch it now.
I just remember.
No, I had the exact same thought. I'm like, oh, is this both an advertisement for a movie that came out a year previously and also an accident because it happened to have been playing as they shot this? Right. But also they're like, leave it in.
Leave it in because guess what? Makes sense. Terrorism is dirty work, and I'm like, yep.
Blowing up federal buildings is hard work, but someone's got to do it, right? Yeah. It's like, what's that guy, Dirty Jobs guy, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's that guy's name?
But
whatever.
Yeah, and that's what you can really give this movie credit for doing, is that this is what became a $30 million studio movie that blows up the J. Edgar Hoover building.
That's where that money is. I mean, no, actually, the money's in the actors.
They had to rebuild. And rebuilding in brutalist style is very
Can I say
difficult.
something? That building is hideous. I've walked by it a billion times. It's fucking ugly. Blow it up. No, you know what, government? You didn't hear that from me, but
yeah, throw it up for the good of just
for the good of my
aesthetics.
eyes. For the good of my eyes.
And then name it after someone who isn't fucking terrible.
Yeah, even though I have been to his grave many times because he's buried in the Congressional National Cemetery where I used to volunteer. Anyway, fun facts for anybody outside of DC and anyone inside of it, who cares? My favorite line is Jeff Bridges when he's during the driving scene, which, by the way, when did they put that bomb into his rental car? Did they intercept the call?
I know.
And then had that one ready? Okay, tell me when the bomb got into the trunk of a rental car.
I think it's when Tim Robbins gets him out of that car at that warehouse place. They have the van parked next to it and they're fighting. Yeah. And I think that's when they put it in there.
The plan was to run into him regard. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like,
yeah, that was bizarre. My theory was, what is that car? But it was a Ford something. It's a discontinued car now. It's like a
POS.
Yeah. Shout out.
Wilson. Yeah, you heard.
But my thought was that they knew he was going to rent a car.
Yeah.
And they put it there like the night before or something. And I don't even know what his scheme was. He was like going to arrange a car, and then to avoid them, he was going to sprint at like 3:30 in the morning. He's like, they're going to see me.
This is what I'm saying.
Buddy,
I didn't understand it.
They've got Geek Squad there, like hanging out. You've already got surveillance on you. You're done.
I didn't understand. They were like, don't do anything. He said, okay. Like, also what's crazy, okay, the terrorist barbecue party was, I was I couldn't make heads or tails. Do we think everybody there was in the terrorist cell, or just the people in the kitchen who were pretending to have a nice time while
just like the bartender, that one guy? I think just because if they were all there, then that scene where Jeff Bridges is like, you fucking whatever it is, right? Or like he says something terrible to him, and then they have to, like, Robbins has to pretend like they're just play fighting.
That was great.
If they were all terrorists, then he wouldn't have had to do that, right?
Yeah,
so like. So clearly there's some normies along with them, but like the bartender is like that creepy guy who's always terroristing, and I don't think.
I guess I'm a little envious of how quickly this family has made friends in Reston, Virginia. I mean, that party was jam packed.
Well, it's before social media, so
I'm from here.
You had to talk to people in real life.
But by far my favorite line is Jeff Bridges driving in his car and he's calling the real Oliver Lang and he can't get through to him, and he says, tell him this is a business emergency. What kind of business other than being a doctor, there's literally no such thing as a business emergency. Let him know it's a business emergency. Jeff, stop.
Yeah
What business? And this whole time his son is just somewhere,
right? Yeah, it's unclear sometimes where the son is supposed to be, but
yeah, and also poor Jeff Bridges, he's never dating again, and I think we know that. He's done. He's done. There's no way.
Oh boy.
There's no hope, Davis.
I get it.
I mean, brutal to have her not believe him the whole time and then die the second that she does. What a bummer.
And I also, like, one of the points in the movie where I was like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to really be grounded in reality in this movie, is like when she dies and you just kind of like, it's just kind of not a big deal. Like, he's very, very sad that one time, and then he's just sort of like going back to his like terrorist hunting. There's no like emotional response really, like in him. There's no emotional consequence to that happening, and I'm like, this is not. This is elevated. It's like,
and he's dead anyway. But now his son's got to visit. Is how many grave is he going to? Hope's grave or whatever her name was. What was it again? Brooke.
Well, we could do so while we're doing sequels of like what happened when Spencer Treat Clark got old with Gladiator 2, we can make a sequel to this movie where he is now an extremist because he's been radicalized by the shit that happened to his parents, and I think that would be a really interesting.
Actually,
Arlington Road 2.
What happens is
Ehren
he grows
Kruger,
up and becomes a co-conspirator in the Lincoln assassination by one of the co-conspirators in Manhunt. So he didn't learn a goddamn thing. during
Oh,
all
that's
this.
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
He plays that inexplicably hot one.
I completely fucking forgot. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great. Anyways.
Now, Matt, I don't know if you like historical, and you might like Manhunt. It's on Apple TV Plus. It's got Lily Rabe's husband playing Lincoln. What's his name again?
Hey, Hamish Linklater.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lily Rabe. There's going to be some prosthetics, obviously, so gird your loins on that front. But other than that, it's great. It's great.
Good.
It's primarily
not too long. A few episodes. You don't have to stick with it for a long time. It's not.
It's
a big
all
investment.
about. It's all about
up your alley.
It's literally about the 12-day chase for John Wilkes Booth, and it's amazing. But anyway, I think those were all my notes. I mean, there was just goofy things. That, again, if we could talk about the shootout with the wife getting murdered by a girl clutching a baby, I was like, whoa! I've never seen such a thing. I was shocked, stunned to my core. I thought the 9-year-old was going to get her for sure.
Yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts on that scene? Let's talk about that scene because that's
which one is this? Who's holding who? Which baby?
So this is the wife's. The flashback of the wife's
the whole Ruby Ridge scene.
Of course,
Ruby Ridge,
yeah. I mean, yeah. There's a couple scenes that are something else. That one, I mean, cool use of a flashback, like just an insano scene with a kid holding a gun. It reminded me of a movie that I heard is really good that I want to see called The Butcher Boy.
Oh yeah,
directed by Neil Jordan. Yeah.
Yep.
And came out a few years before this, but with like a boy going crazy with a gun. But I mean, that was like that scene felt like something in True Detective season 1, or
it totally does.
Yeah.
Where they just go to the backwoods, or it's somewhere in the bayou, or it wasn't in the bayou in this movie, but it's just like terrible miscommunication. And then Jeff Bridges is so intense, and he's telling the class about it. I kind of like that flashback because it goes for it. It shows us something. I feel like we don't really get a flashback that violent and unhinged. And but there was a scene, Bridges, I think, is researching at night, and then it cuts to him in the lawn with the notebook open. So are we saying, is that scene telling us that he fell asleep in the pitch black darkness, reading the yearbook photo?
You're reading the yearbook photo.
With the page on Tim Robbins. And then
one of the 10 million times he's snuck up on, but Tim Robbins just keeps appearing.
Yeah, he just keeps doing it. That's something the movie did well, was the height difference.
Yeah, they were like at the baseball, like what they were doing. I noticed it very much when they were doing the batting cage thing. Like they sat Jeff Bridges down even further. I said, Tim Robbins is already tall. We don't need to do this, but okay, get him down there even more.
Man, I mean, he's a lanky guy, and he's never. They offered Tim Robbins both roles originally, and he said he wanted the villain because he's never played a villain before. And it'd be less time on screen than the Jeff Bridges character. But
listen, he's got to get home to Susan.
Hey,
that's at the time.
That's really I love. Yeah, two of the most chilling scenes I think are the one. So where he sort of, as he's like looking at the microfiche and he sneaks up on him, and you have no idea how much he's already seen. It's really, really effective the way that's shot. And then also just, the way that in the confrontation scene in the backyard where Jeff Bridges, it's all about his eyes, right? And like, he's just sort of like trying to figure out how to navigate this conversation. And Robbins is using his height and being, it's a great scene. I love that scene. I think that for so the Ruby Ridge scene I thought was excessive and unnecessary on so many levels, and like does not need to be in the movie. I got what happened to his wife. They sort of explained it, and I understood that it was a Ruby Ridge type scenario. I felt that the way that the whole thing was sort of handled was pretty clumsy, but what I will say, and what I think is like really interesting about this movie, especially given the time, is that I think Ehren Kruger is really trying to navigate some of the sort of moral trickiness of this whole sort of like domestic terrorism thing, that, you know, jumping the gun, having having bad intelligence, having intelligence or, you know, federal agents who sort of are accidentally do the wrong thing at the wrong time, whatever. And when you look at what happened with Waco and with Ruby Ridge, like bad intelligence was a big part of it, right? And I think it's like, I'm glad that he sort of plays with that. And then also like, and I wanted them to dwell more on this almost, is in the twist in the end, where it sort of then turns that on its head and sort of then blames the media and how a certain appearance of information, right, then gets turned against the hero of the movie. And I think that's really interesting, right? Like I think it's kind of underbaked, but it's one of my favorite things about this movie, that it really does take seriously that there's like a lot of moral morass that is like, it needs to be weeded through when you look at sort of these big you know, sort of internal domestic terrorist issues, especially again in 2024, with it happening all over the place and on the internet and so on and so forth. I think it's even more prescient that like that's really hard to navigate. And I give it a good A for effort as far as that goes. But yeah, the scene itself is.
I found it strange that the wife wasn't given any sort of bulletproof vest. I don't know where we were.
She's just wearing some clothes.
She's just like, sorry, I thought we were
very dangerous.
I thought we were actually camping. It's like, no, ma'am.
You believe this guy is stockpiling AR-15s, and you're like, no, let's just go in my street clothes, and you know, we'll have a casual conversation. Like, it doesn't. Again, yeah, it seems poorly conceived as a scene to make it work. But anyway, that's my praise / gripe as far as.
I guess I actually ended up appreciating the whole. They could have just let it be this shootout that went wrong, that killed his wife, and then they gave it this much larger meaning of, well, guess what, they were wrong, and they were. It was actually not her fault that she got shot, but you know, had they not been there, she'd probably be alive. And I don't know, like, it just kind of was like, who's he really mad at? Who could say? Like, I don't know. And you know, they needed.
Well, yeah, but then they turned that as a reason why he committed this so-called, like, why they think he committed this terrorist act at the end, because it's like he was mad at the government for killing his wife because they fucked up.
It was so layered. They that means, you know what? That I don't think they obviously organized that, but I think they had obviously been maybe planning this since she died, because they immediately zeroed in on a guy they could use. I don't know, maybe, like, how is that how far back it went? And for 1 second, by the way, I don't know if you guys had this thought, maybe not Matt, because Matt loves this movie and has seen it more often. When he finally reaches his friend when he's trying to warn his friend about the bomb, for 1 second I thought, oh God, his friend is also a terrorist. The way I
thought so too. Yes.
When he hung up the phone, I went, "Oh fuck!"
I thought Louis Gossett Jr.'s cousin was also a terrorist.
Okay. Is that really
was kind of bummed that he wasn't.
Cousin?
It really is.
Look alike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that. I did.
Yeah, Matt.
I was like, he's in on it.
What do you? So yes. What do you think about that? So we talked about this with like sort of the opening scene and, you know, the sort of untold story of what actually happened there. But do you? I'm sort of on the fence about this as to whether or not it's just a coincidence that they happen to be living next door to this guy. But do you think that they were like, they knew that he might be gettable because his wife had been killed in this fucked up raid?
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think about. But he's a great patsy to use for that reason, right? He's a terrorist professor in college.
Which is so crazy given how his wife died. At that point, you're like it started out as history, and then it was mostly only terror.
Yeah, it's like he's like the Robert Langdon of you know, terrorology.
My dude, history's pretty big. You can just not teach about this part and do some other cool stuff, but then your class would probably be empty. So never mind.
On Arlington Road. I went with the Jim Blossom's version. Good song.
I know, and I brought it back to because this is, after all, a movie about a family vacation. After all,
in some ways it is. It's a good point. No, I actually I'm kind of convinced now. I kind of want to go rewatch it with that lens. Again, it's one of those things where I'm like, if it was written better and conceived better, this would be more obvious. Like, give me some scenes. I want some scenes. This also kind of bugged me. Once we know as the audience, like, that Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack are like this terrorist cell between the two of them, give me a couple scenes where they like talk to each other about their motives and about what they're actually doing, right? Like, give me more of like what Joan. I still, up until and I guess maybe that made when she kills Hope Davis like more dramatic, because you're never quite sure how much she knows or like how into it she is. And I guess that's a choice, but like I would have preferred to like have known more about how involved she was with this this whole,
like, did they meet? I started to think
terrorism club.
these people, either they met in terrorist club or they were put together to create to have the look of a family that's less like, yes,
the
they ended up having
Americans.
children. Yep, like the Americans, they had children together, but no one really loves anyone, or if they do, it's some weird terrorist version of love, and then all of it's for show so they can keep getting embedded in these various communities. Because the way she spoke about, like, I wanted to know more about this terrorist cell, because at the end she mentions, where are we going next? I hope it's somewhere nice, as if it's the witness protection program. I'm like, what is this organization that they are a part of? It felt like an actual company and not a bunch of ragtag weirdos who just hate the government. She made it sound like we're being placed somewhere, as if there is a multi-step plan that they are all. I'd love to see. This is why the show would work. The TV show would be great. You're right, it is the Americans, but still, let's do it. Let's do it. The Americans part 2.
But you've convinced me that, take away the flashback scene and give us some more kind of investigative scenes where, like, we get the microfilm scene, but then we get like 2 scenes going to that Liberty Travel compound, like an hour outside in rural Virginia, wherever the heck they are near that strip mall. Give us more stuff like that, because that was all the movie really had as far as investigative scenes, right? Like, you get the microfilm, and then he keeps going back to the yearbooks, and then he visits the old guy, the father of the guy who was blamed for the murders and for the bombing in St. Louis. So it's a little bit repetitive in that regard, right? Like, the flashbacks. I feel like most flashback scenes in movies, or many times, they feel like they can be done away with.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost better for the audience.
It was a studio note. Somebody said, people aren't going to get it. We're going to do these reshoots. Matt, you just said something that blew my mind that I didn't pick up on until you just said it. Until you said that when he went to visit that guy's dad, in my mind, that kid was actually part of the terrorist cell. But no, he was another Jeff Bridges. He was another Patsy. You're right. It didn't even occur to me. I was thinking,
oh shit!
This is
oh my god!
Right, John. Matt just casually said this thing, and I'm like, oh Jesus! They've been doing it, and and that guy's son was their previous Jeff Bridges.
Fuck! So he's not actually fucking.
No. Matt, you're so Matt, you're very like, Matt, you knew this. You knew it. We did it. John and I did know. We didn't pick up.
So he's
on
not
it.
Tim McVeigh, or maybe Tim McVeigh is also one of those people. Oh,
Tim McVeigh is innocent. You heard it here from John Brooks. Timothy McVeigh didn't do it.
Right, and Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it. Yeah,
Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh man, is that how far back this goes?
They
to
have
Lee
the
Harvey
same
Oswald?
haircut. I won't give this haircut up. Oh my god, Matt, you just blew.
We could do You could do a whole Arlington Road cinematic universe where you tell all these stories of like these fucking people and how far back they go.
Every single person,
because they're mad about Tim Robbins' dad's farm or whatever.
Honey, get
Yeah.
over it. We all have childhood trauma.
over it, man.
Come on.
Yeah.
If I blow up a building every time I was sad about my childhood, there'd be no buildings left.
0.
And you can pull that quote and send it right to the government.
I will say one of the reasons this movie works so well, though, is like everybody, and I need to credit them. Everybody is fully on board. Like, everybody is playing this game, and it's great. Like, the way that like Joan Cusack's perfect, Robbins and Bridges are perfect. Like, they're all fully on board with the project, and if anybody weren't, it wouldn't work. Which is maybe why the cast isn't as big as maybe Matt wants it to be. And it's you gotta get buy-in to make this sort of over the top kind of suspense thriller work.
I found myself, and I know we're wrapping up, I found myself very obsessed with Jeff Bridges' voice.
Yeah.
Always.
It's not because it's deep. It's deep, but he has this way of talking where I'm worried he's not going to be able to get his whole sentence out. I'm like, oh,
it's like there's like hay in the side of his mouth somewhere.
I'm like,
yeah,
we're not going to finish. We're not going to get there, and I'll never know. But he's always had that, except for in The Dude when he like relaxed and elongated and it was like this, but otherwise it's stilted. Am I making
no?
them?
You're absolutely right.
No, it's maybe he was putting more behind it to make it even more tense because I was certainly tense. I was like, he's never going to finish a sentence. We're going to be here all day. Speaking of time, and then I swear to God, I know we got.
Yeah, let's. I know. Yes.
When he's telling his students the story of his wife's murder under the guise of a field trip, I swear to God, it went from night to dusk or day to dusk, and I thought, how long have those children been there listening to this man regale them with the story of his wife's murder? This is crazy. Now they don't know it because he doesn't say it. They think they're just like learning about a cool thing that if the internet was around, they'd be doing that. But I still thought to myself, he's hijacked these children and they're just in this field for hours as he stares off. If my teacher, think about it from their perspective, they're just looking at the back of his head because he's leaning against the post. And for us, the audience, yes, it's very dramatic. We see him, we see them. But for them, they're just staring at the back of his head. I would have been like me next to my person that I talk to in class all the time. Is he okay? Do we think he's okay? I don't know. He's not looked at us for like an hour, so I don't know. Would be my conversation.
I also have one more question that I'm a little confused about that might tie this all together in terms of like how they knew him and like how to go after him and so on and so forth. Is the girl who is being interviewed last in the video montage in his class, she's the terrorist.
She's the one.
So she's the one.
Remember, she's not a very good actor because in the interview at the end of it, she goes, she makes a face to the camera,
little smirk, like, haha.
These are not actors.
I blew up the FBI building.
That was me. I was part of it. Mm-hmm.
I gotta watch it again now. Also,
this woman went back to school.
Yeah. Oh, what if the Paramount Plus series is about Spencer Tree Clark's character? What if it's like actually set as a sequel to the movie, and you get him as a modern far extremist, he's just gotten off the bus from January 6th and here we go. Right? That'd be kind of interesting. I genuinely do want a sequel to this movie, kind of set now, centered around that character, because I think you could do a lot that would not be at all controversial to anybody and wouldn't get anybody freaking out on Twitter at all. So
I'm looking it up.
My money back guarantee. Yeah.
It was co-produced by Seth Fisher, who was writing the adaptation. He did The Alienist, which I like. I think that was that. Was that Dakota Fanning? Hulu show, right?
Yep.
Pellington directing the series, and that's all we got about it. And that was again 3 years ago, sadly. Usually they will announce if something's dead, so that maybe it just set something. I don't know, the strike.
Maybe strike got
something to it.
Yeah,
stupid strike. So many good we lost so many good things. I don't like to think about it. Although I did just watch, Matt, I doubt very seriously you're excited about the Agatha All Along, which is like the spinoff off of WandaVision. Now, I'm not a huge Marvel person, but I love Kathryn Hahn, and she is starring in this show. So I'll watch her fart in a box, honestly. And I bet a lot of men would as well. But she's just so wonderful that, I don't even know if you need to be familiar with WandaVision to appreciate it. So, Matt, if you're looking for a non-90s, non-psychological thriller starring the great Kathryn Hahn.
Love her. Big fan of Afternoon Delight.
Yes. Yes.
Incredible
She rules.
By her. But I think it's Jill Soloway. Did she direct that maybe?
Joey Soloway, but yes.
Or Joey Soloway. Okay. But I have a couple final thoughts on this film that I'd like to say.
Okay.
Number one.
Jerry Springer us.
Let's do it. Number one. He was the mayor of Cincinnati, same home state as Catherine Hahn, who's a Cleveland, Ohio native.
Look at the way this all comes together.
All these Arlington roads are converging. Arlington Road. That was so ravey, Matt. If I saw you do that at a rave in 1997, I'd go, okay.
I know. Yeah, I was feeling high off the
it was great.
Opening scene to Go, where Sarah Polley's kind of
hell yeah.
Perfect soundtrack, perfect motion picture.
Great movie. So, number one thought about this movie. Jeff Bridges, he is a really good food chewer. One of the best food chewing actors out there. Brad Pitt's in that pantheon, but Bridges has one scene where he's chewing on a few nuts or chips after a late night barbecue. First of all, that party went on for way too long.
Those people love to have parties. They just moved there. That's why I thought everybody was in the terrorist cell. How did they get so many friends so quickly?
That's the other thing I noticed on the rewatch is that they keep reappearing. Like the people at the Liberty Travel, the guy who hears the screeching car, he's at the party.
Yeah. During the one scene where they laugh psychotically when Jeff Bridges is like, it's panning around at all their faces laughing at him. And I was like, oh, we're getting weird.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, great food chewer. He does the same in Big Lebowski too. He's like, hey man, I like your getup. You gotta curse so much, dude. Fuck your meat, man.
This is good.
That's a good Bridges.
This is a good Bridges. This is a good Bridges as the dude.
He's a good. He's got the chin thing going a little bit too, but that's number one. Number two, I don't even know. Oh, Mark Pellington did a movie after this that has some DNA ties, and I think it's another fantastic B movie that got. It was like a $30-40 million budget. That's the Mothman Prophecies.
Richard Gere and Deborah Messing, right? That's a West Virginia. That's their.
That's right.
Yeah, that's their big guy.
And as a Pittsburgh native, that was shot it was shot in and around Pittsburgh. First of all, I remember growing up there when that movie was shot there, and happens in West Virginia, about an hour and a half, I think, away from the city. Mm-hmm. It's based on this fable where the people saw the Mothman. Really solid movie with really good supporting actors, and I think that helped that movie a lot. Like Will Patton plays a big role in that. Laura Linney is a cop. A terrific, like, creepy film that just hits on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
I never thought of those two. I mean, I knew he did it after this. I never thought of them as having close DNA. And you're right, because there is an element of, like, sort of suburban paranoia.
Nobody believes this man, and there's also a dead wife. God, this Pellington loves a dead wife. Jesus.
Now, his next movie was U2 3D. How does that tie into the Arlington Road and Mothman?
Well, Bono was a huge Gin Blossoms fan, and actually,
I want that to be true.
I know. I mean, but Mothman and Arlington Road, great examples of films that do not get made anymore, especially the last 20 years.
We say that a lot in this show. Yeah.
It's just if you're making a horror movie, it's got to be a micro budget. It's going to be between 5 and 10 million. Probably have some other IP associated with it. And if you're making like a thriller like this, it just doesn't. It's a TV show or a miniseries.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last psychological thriller motion picture that was something like a Seven or a this, or like what was The Silence of the Lambs. I know there's been more since then, but when I think of those quintessential, I honestly we just don't do it anymore, do we?
Yeah, and it's funny, the Little Things, which is a movie I sort of like, sort of hate, which was a straight to HBO Max COVID release. With Rami Malek at his worst and Denzel pretty good.
Are you sure? Because as Freddie Mercury, he was very nice, but that was such a poor representation of Freddie Mercury's actual life, though he did look great as Freddie Mercury. But anyway, yes.
Yeah. But Little Things is one of those, like, kind of, it felt almost, I like the fact that it felt like a throwaway 90s flick. maybe like Fallen or Copycat. Even those movies are better than stuff we see now.
Is that Denzel?
Yeah.
The one where like
Denzel.
you pass it by touching? What's the
Yeah.
song in the movie that they always sing? And Elias Koteas, who bring him back.
Yeah.
Listen,
Oh, we're all big Elias Koteas
are you
fans.
kidding?
Oh my God, I was
Yeah.
gramming hard about him last night because he stole Janet Plan. He stole my heart last weekend.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Listen, even as far back as Some Kind of Wonderful, he stole that movie. He stole that movie.
I got to see that. That's is that Michael
That's
Ian?
John Hughes. That's Eric Stoltz. That's Mary Stuart Masterson. That's Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
That's Craig Sheffer, pre-Nightbreed.
Craig Sheffer really going for it. I'll stop the off-topic on it, but Craig Sheffer really went for it in a movie on HBO Max right now, Fire in the Sky from '93.
Oh, the Travis Walton story.
Sky.
I interviewed Travis Walton.
Sweeney, baby.
I interviewed him. Yeah, his
Wow.
story. Listen, if I had to believe any alien abduction story, and that's usually not my cup of tea because the fans really ruin it. It's like the Dave Matthews Band. Like, I'd love to hear more, but your fans are so insufferable. But anyway, like, please stop.
So true.
And I'm including my mother and her 2 Dave Matthews Band tattoos. Mother, I love you. But yeah, UFO fans, knock it off. But Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton's, I believe him. I believe that man, or I believe that he believes it. But yeah,
I believe he believes it. I believe a lot of them believe it. I don't believe it, but I believe that they believe.
And do you believe in life? Anyway.
So just one last thing real quick then, because
No,
Matt, you said something, you said something that I also wanted to address very quickly, which is that when I realized this movie came out in July, I was shocked. I'm like, this is 1990s September written all the fuck over it, and I don't know what they were thinking trying to compete, like the movies that this is competing against. I'm like, no, like no one's gonna go see this. This is very, very bad timing. I really feel like if this had come out in like late August, mid-September, somewhere in that range, it would have been far more successful and far better remembered than it is.
Yeah.
It's wrong time. Yeah. That's when you release those movies,
Although I am seeing a long
when Dimension
way.
Films makes all their money is in those sweet September, October months. But anyhow, all right. Well, we are way. God, we've been doing this for a long time. It's been a couple weeks, Jen. So like I know.
I could do it for another hour. I swear to God. I swear.
I know. We're not going to though. So we're going to start wrapping up, and we are going to present Matt with our final questions. So Matt, aside from Arlington Road, and aside from The Limey, I know a couple of your favorite movies from 1999. Aside from the ones that I already know, what would you pick as your favorite movie of 1999?
Whew. I think Bringing Out the Dead.
Ooh,
oh, good one.
Yeah.
You're the first, I think.
No one's ever said that. Well, I've been
have.
I also want to say, as a caveat moving forward, John, I think we should not let people say The Matrix moving forward, by the way.
Okay,
not that
fine.
you were going
no
to
more
that,
The Matrix.
but
Discounting The Matrix.
Bringing Out the Dead is a great choice. What a delight.
One.
Woohoo.
Speaking of like 99, there's a lot of themes in this year, but one of them was big time directors doing these kind of obscure madcap films, and I think this one is one, and the other is Summer of Sam.
That's our next.
That's next.
Well, that's next, everybody. You did it.
Hello, goodbye.
Spoiler alert. No, I love that movie. Yeah.
Well, this is a great way. We just make our guest guess which movie we're doing next, and that's how it works now.
Previously on The Minus Man, I actually told Spike Lee a month ago I was on an e-bike speeding through, and he was getting to his car, and I was like, I did an episode on Summer of Sam. You should check it out on Hit Factory. He was like, that's my man. And then he pounded.
He was practically a guest. He was practically a guest.
Next time you see him, be like, by the way, remember me? I'm the Summer of Sam guy. We got one more.
Remember me? I'm Summer of Sam.
Remember me? I'm Samuel.
I'm Sam. I'm a Christian now, so it's okay.
By the way, I completely agree with you. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about this sort of here and there on the show before, but one of the things that's so fascinating about this year, among the many things, and you've hit the nail on the head, there are these, like, some of the marquee names of, like, when you name the greatest directors, right? When you name, like, the biggest auteur directors, they released movies this year, and they're not necessarily the ones that we talk about. Like, Robert Altman had a fucking movie this year,
Yeah.
you know, and like nobody talks about it. Yeah, and there was a Martin Scorsese movie, and it's like the one that is least referenced of all of his movies of the last 25 years is Bringing Out the Dead. Yeah, it's really it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, no one has mentioned that one. We have not covered it yet, so it is in the future. What is, aside from Summer of Sam, your your what is your favorite movie of all time?
Man,
I know.
yeah,
It hurts.
this is the tough cookie. Well,
Yeah.
I think Mulholland Drive, and it's funny. There's usually one scene. I think music does a big thing for me. There's usually one scene in a movie. It's like a needle drop or some kind of music number that changes my perception of film and makes me either love it or not. But that's the scene in Mulholland Drive where it's the audition. This is the girl. And Kristen Thoreau's kind of doing her thing. But that movie did that, and that's why I love Bringing Out the Dead, to be honest, is I think that soundtrack encapsulates the 90s. Like 10,000 Maniacs is in that. REM, The Clash.
Oh, maybe that was when he and Natalie Merchant were dating.
No.
Surely they were not night swimming.
Get it. Look, we can make REM jokes all, like, we can make them all night.
Not
swimming,
making an REM joke is like trying not to breathe.
God, that's a deep cut, Jen.
That's my favorite REM song because it's very sadly about his grandmother dying.
Yeah.
It makes me feel all, the things that you should feel while listening to that.
It is a great REM song. Matt, I was today years old. Have you seen both versions of Mulholland Drive? Are they both available? Because I didn't know until today that Mulholland Drive is kind of technically a 1999 movie as well.
Was it released in America and then
no, it's weird. Do you know this story, Matt? That it was originally a TV pilot. So
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go on IMDb, it's actually listed twice. One for 2001 when the movie came out, and one for 1999 when they created and produced and did not release the television pilot, which then got retooled and re-edited and added on to create the movie. But yeah, it's sort of technically. It was supposed to be David Lynch's like follow-up to Twin Peaks as a TV series, but it wasn't, and turned into a movie instead. So there you go. But I'd be interested to see what the original looked like. Apparently, it does like exist. You can actually like watch it somehow, but I'm not sure how.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to know. I'll look out for that. I had no idea. But I do feel lucky to. I'm a big fan of this podcast, of you guys, and. There are a few things I obsess over more than 90s movies, preferably on Tubi or Pluto.
I love Tubi so much.
1999, I think I mentioned at like any party I go to, it'll come up at least once. I just start talking about the movie. I'm not even kidding. Like it's
now I'm a little jealous, Matt. You're going to like a lot of parties. Tell me more about that.
Jen, we're technically at Brooklyn parties now. That's cool.
I'd love to like go to a party. It's whatever. I mean, I used to.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think Paul Dano and I have become best friends? Clearly,
you, Spike Lee, Paul Dano. This is it's a hell of a list.
It's not a bad lineup, and so yeah, 99 as a year, I think it just like fascinates me. But the 90s in general, I think it's something with growing up with those films and seeing them in the periphery, and then seeing them on cable all the time and knowing the titles and names. And it's cool to look back now, having hopefully some taste than back then, but seeing what was actually good or what is good that I didn't even hear about. Yeah, so you know, 99, big year for this guy.
I mean, for me, it was 95 to 97, but yes, I hear you. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm just talking about music mostly, although I do love
Oh, for
movies
sure.
of the mid-90s as well, but
yes.
I haven't left.
Yeah.
My playlist is embarrassing. I'm never going to listen to Chappell Roan, so I just want to say it. I know it's like not cool, but no.
Yeah. I mean, for me, 99 is when time ended, and everything after it is just sort of like a denouement.
Okay, speaking of time, I do not want to get us on another tangent, but did anyone happen to catch the trailer for the Time Bandits series?
I
think
saw
it's a series,
that you
or is it a
posted
movie?
I
Is it a
didn't know it
series or is it a movie?
existed.
Taika Waititi, shocker.
Love it.
I think the best part about that is Lisa Kudrow. I mean, unbelievable cast. Jermaine Clement, obviously, some child that looks delightful. I don't know. I love Time Bandits. I'm excited. You know, it's fine. I'm angry that we seem to be living in a world of sequels, reboots, and franchises, but sometimes,
if you're gonna remake and revive anything, Time Bandits is a good place to
make it look good. And I do want to say one more thing that occurred to me when you were talking about always seeing this movie on like TNT, Matt, is that somehow Tim Robbins got into some sort of deal where after that was done, the only movie you ever saw was Shawshank Redemption. Tim Robbins
or The Devil's Advocate. They sort of went back and forth,
trapped in a loop of like commercial television of the two of the films that he was in, and there was a time in Tim Robbins' life where every time he turned on the television, he got to see his face, and that's nice.
Yeah, and totally. And you know, it's funny enough. IQ was a big Tim Robbins movie in my household. My dad loved that film for some reason.
I like that movie too.
It's so good. It's such a good movie.
Maybe we should just.
Your dad is right.
Okay, we're gonna start a side movie podcast called The Apologists, and it's us going, "That movie was great." About a movie that like was like nobody, but we're like we're just making all sorts of excuses for these motion pictures. I'm like, what?
Actually, IQ was great. The podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, it's late. It's been a long time. It's been a lot of fun, Matt. We'll definitely have you back.
Yes.
Probably when we get around to bringing out The Dead, I guess, because you're apparently that movie's biggest fan as well. But that's going to be a while. But we will definitely have you back. Really fun to have you on. Thank you so much. Before we go, do you want to advertise yourself a little bit?
Yeah, you can find my work at the Gutter Review. If you want to hear about more movies like the ones I think we talked about today, and especially Arlington Road, that genre continues on. And some of the articles I've written, but also Massive Cinema, Night Tide Mag. I did a recent review on Blackout, which is a Larry Fessenden werewolf movie that came out this year. Seek it out if you can. I think it's on Shudder actually right now.
Yep.
7-day free trial. And I have an upcoming piece also on Night Tide coming up on The Shining and What Lies Beneath, the women of those two movies. I felt like they had some connection.
Were they both tortured? Are you talking about like their characters or how they were treated? I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I could tackle that.
You don't have to tackle that.
But
everybody knows what was going on that set.
Yeah. But no, it's the women that are forced to feel the pain of like the men who are crazy or sociopathic around them.
That's an evergreen thought if ever there was one.
Yeah. So
that's good.
It's
great.
But and then also the Trap piece on Night Tide Mag. Once that's out, I'm excited about that because it's actually a new movie that I'm reviewing and not something from '97. But
you can email us at 1999@cageclub.me. You can find this and other shows at cageclub.me. You can find us on the social medias at 1999, the podcast, etc. We'll be back shortly with, as Matt already spoiled for you.
No, he didn't. He guessed. He was a good guesser. Not a spoiler.
Summer of Sam. It's a good one. So thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next time at Look Out for Frogs. Take the ride on the West Coast here.